Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Erin Brown, and you are now listening to Resilience in Action, the podcast. Perfect. What's going on, everyone? My name is Erin Brown, and we are here with Angela Musco, and you are listening to Resilience in Action, the podcast. Angela, go ahead and give us a little background, give us a little history. Let us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, so first off, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. So my name is Angela. I work in network marketing. I work completely for myself, which is super appropriate because I'm also neurodivergent, and I don't think that me working for somebody else does not really work. So I am a mom of a 14-year-old. I had her when I was 18. We live in upstate New York, and like upstate New York, not like super top, but definitely in the woods away from people. I love people, but I am extremely introverted. We live with my mom, which has always been my dream, just to have like all of us in a house together. I'm super passionate about learning about people, understanding people. So I've kind of put myself in a position where I can make an income from home, I can be my own boss, and I can literally just be a weirdo and learn about people and study people. It sounds so creepy. Like I live in the woods and I learn about people and study people. I don't know, that I feel like that's like some criminal mind stuff, but yeah, that's me. I'm very basic. I love nice things, but I am just very I am super content with just living a very calm, mellow, normal life. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm sure there's a lot more. There's definitely a lot more.
There's definitely
I'm sure there's a lot more.
Listen. I like to do my homework before I interview anyone, so I know like a little bit about them. And you, she said, "There's probably more. There's definitely more. There's definitely more." Okay, all right. So you said you're a mother of a 14-year-old. How's that?
So I think it's great. Like I love the teen years, and like I say that to people when people are like, "Oh, you're a mom of a teen girl. Like, is that awful?" And I'm like, "No, I love it." It could also possibly be she's neurodivergent as well. She has ADHD, so like we have the same brain, which is really cool. But it's really cool to like watch her like develop into the person that she just is naturally and kind of like lead and guide as a parent instead of like, I don't know what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like super strict rules. Like she has rules, she has boundaries, like all of that, but it's like more of like the leadership side, which is really cool. And like watching her develop, I love the teen years, and I could like literally talk to you in like 2 years and be like, nope, I take it all back. But I mean, right now I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So all right, so let's go to your childhood, your upbringing a little bit. Woo, caught you, bang, got you.
we're hopping right in.
You're jumping right in, rips the band-aid off. Because you said you and your daughter both have ADHD. So I would like to, for our people, our listeners, to get a little understanding, because if I'm not mistaken, you said you weren't diagnosed until you were 26. So what was that like growing up, feeling like super different and learning how to navigate that?
Yeah. So growing, so a lot of, I'm gonna like preface this because the way that I'm gonna say it is like actually my perception growing up, and I know that that's not accurate right now. So for me, I did know a couple people who had ADHD, but they were white boys. So in my brain, that was like a white boy thing. Gotcha. Honestly, right? And it was like, I grew up in a house, my parents really didn't know about it, but back then it was kind of like, this is the thing that they label kids who are just like out of control type thing. So from a really young age, I knew that I was different and that I thought on a completely different level, like stupid young. Like I would ask questions and my parents would be like, literally ask me like, why don't you ask normal kid questions? And I'm like, oh, I'm not a normal kid then, right? So like all these things started getting put in my head. And it's not their fault. Like I don't fault my parents at all. Like my mom laughs about it and she's like, oh, that's what that was, right? So from a really, really young age, it was either or. And I was told like when we would go out in public, like, be on your best behavior, don't embarrass us, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I can't be myself then. That's a question because I'm gonna be a weirdo, right? But then like, there was a point in time where I would go out, like, and just not talk. And my parents were like, well, you're being antisocial. And I'm like, oh, crap. Okay, so I can't be me and I can't not be me. So I have to figure out somebody. So a lot of my childhood was spent observing people to figure out who I should be in certain rooms, right? So I would walk into the room and like literally just look around and listen to people and watch their facial expressions. And that's how I communicated for a long time, was not that I ever was nonverbal, but like I learned about people in a nonverbal way in order to figure out who I should be in that room. Like, how much of me am I allowed? How much of me am I not allowed? Why is this room different from this room? So like I started like from a really young age, just like memorizing different types of people and how they behaved. And then I got to a point where I was like, so this is literally my entire childhood. Like it didn't come across, like it didn't even like phase my mind like, oh, I'm different. It's like, I'm different, so how do I fit in? So it was like always the focus of like, how do I best fit in to not embarrass my parents, not embarrass myself, not like have to talk myself out of things, not have to explain myself like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. So I'm like, there has to be a more duplicatable way to figure this out. Like there shouldn't be like me walking into a room to wait to figure out who I should be, right? So from like a really, really young age, probably like 8, 9, 10, I started realizing that there's like people who like study other people for a living. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like I could just read what they wrote, right? Or I could just like learn what they did. So that was pretty much my entire childhood and teen years. And it became less of me realizing how different I was and more of me having this focus on, I don't even think it was like me realizing how different I was. It was just like, oh, this is a thing. I don't know why it's a thing. It's just a thing. All I have to do is figure out how other people are and just mimic them, just mirror them. And then nobody would know I'm different, right? So that was literally my entire childhood from as early as I can remember all the way up through my teen years.
So you developed the ability to be a chameleon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then it was like, because of that, it's funny you say that, because of that, I had such different friend groups because I didn't want to blend them.
Gotcha.
It's like, I was like one Angela here and one Angela here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, now I got to figure out how do I have a baby? I have to have a baby of Angela if I blend them, right? So I was a chameleon, but then I had all these different lives, right?
Yeah.
And it was never like a lie necessarily, you know what I'm saying? It was just, how do I mirror these people so that I don't stick out? So, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So that's something you've been dealing with for a long time. And how did you go from learning how to be a chameleon and mimic and mirror other people to who you are today?
Yeah. So a couple different things happened. I'm gonna tell you like the one thing that made me realize that like most people aren't doing what I do. And I really thought that that's how it was, right? But like I knew it wasn't to the extreme because like I'm sitting here at 10 years old, like reading like about Sigmund Freud and like why people put things in their mouth because they didn't have enough bottle time. Like why am I 10 years old knowing all this, right? So when I was a teenager, I gravitated more towards friendships of Black people and people of color. And something, I'm going to say the word tangible, but I know like tangible is like you can touch something, but that's obviously not the word. So when I started building relationships with them and their families, there was like this thing. I didn't know what this thing was that like was like a mutual understanding of like, I would never fit into a certain part of their world and I would never be invited into that world. And that was super comforting to me because I felt like that with everybody, right? But I didn't know why I felt like that with everybody. But with those friends, it was like this mutual understanding, and I felt like I could be more of myself.
Okay.
So it was like, I don't feel the need to be invited to whatever part of this world, because I had no idea when I was a young teenager. I don't feel the need to be like impede on any part of their world that I wasn't going to be invited into it. I knew that I wasn't going to be invited into it. So I felt like there was this mutual, like tangible thing of like, you will always be different, right? And I could just be myself, right? And then my brain immediately goes like, well, why? Right? Like I can't just like, I don't know, why is this post-it pink? I don't know. Like my brain immediately goes like, it has to be more than like melanin, right? So from that point, I started realizing like what was actually happening, right? Like I could like now have this tangible thing of like, wait, why are these friends, like why do I feel like I can be more of myself with this group of friends and not that group of friends? Like, why is there so much subliminal stuff of like this unspoken, this is who you have to be, right? So when I had this tangible thing of like, we have this mutual understanding that we love each other, we respect each other, we have a really good relationship, but there's this certain part that you will never fit into. And that's just how my brain has always worked, right? So I had this thing. And once I had that, it was like, whoa, this nobody fits in anywhere.
Yeah.
And we all just walk around with like this unsaid, ridiculous, like, and that was way before I had been diagnosed with ADHD, but like we all walk around with this, right? We all walk around, except it was just like super, super real to me. Not that it's not real to anybody else, but like I actually have a brain condition, right? So it's like, we all do this. So like the more I try to fit in, the more I'm feeding this narrative that nobody ever talks about. So like, why can't I just be myself? And on top of it, it's exhausting trying to be a chameleon with all these people for them to still possibly not like you.
It's a lot of work.
It's so much work. And it's so much work. It's like, I was watching the Tinder Swindler.
Oh goodness.
Was that me as a child, right? Like minus the stealing and the criminal activity, right? But I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's what I was doing, right? So once I had this like tangible thing to hold on to, or to hold on to,
yeah.
I was like, once I had this tangible thing, I started realizing like, wow, we're literally all just doing this, and for what, right? So that was kind of when I started like realizing, 26, I got diagnosed with ADHD, and then 28 or 27 or 28, I actively made a decision to just stop. Like, what am I doing this for? This is exhausting. Like, people aren't gonna like me. There's gonna be somebody who doesn't like me. There's gonna be a lot of people probably who don't like me. There's billions of people. Like, why am I trying to like fit into like billions of people? Like, I don't think I was put on this earth for that. So that's when I like actively made the decision to just like, it is what it is. But it was a long process of like realizing that like, wow, we are all weird. We're all weird. We all don't fit in, and we're all just like walking this earth trying to fit in. I don't know. So
yeah, out here trying to find our tribe.
right. Yeah. So yeah.
But you found yours. But you found your tribe, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that. Let's dive into this businesswoman over here.
Yeah. So I had my daughter when I was 18. I had zero skills. I mean, like I was still in high school. Right? Like, I mean, I had skills.
Skills. Don't say that. Like, you had skills.
Like master of psychology. By the time I graduated high school. So what did I even need to know about slopes and graphs for? I don't know. So in my head, I had like no skills. I got into retail management, which is awful.
Yes.
So bad.
Yeah.
But in my head, it was like, okay, I'm like, life is happening. Like, I'm not only responsible for myself, which I'm actually not responsible for myself quite yet, but I also have a kid on the way, right?
Yeah.
So my brain said, how do you make the most money the easiest way with the least amount of skills? I'm like, I know people, retail, right? So I got into retail. I was miserable. I'm a terrible employee. Like, rules are not rules are not my thing because I go to the why, right? And so it's like some rules, it's like, it's just cause, Angela. I'm like, no, that's not good enough, right?
I need to know why. Like, you need to explain to me why X and Y equals Z. And without that, I'm not doing it.
Right. So like that was awful. But I did it because I had to make an income, right? So I ended up retail, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go back to school, right? Like I'm gonna go to college because like I really love people. I really love working with people. And I don't think that retail is the way that I'm going to be working with people my whole life. I hope not. I hope I didn't do all this research my whole life to end up, nothing against retail, right? But so I went to school and I started studying psychology and legal studies. So I'm like, I just want to keep learning about people. And if I'm going to do it, then I'm going to get a paper that says I've done it. Like, I'm going to do that. So I ended up loving it. I was working for my dad at the time. He's an appraiser. And I was working for him, which ended up being perfect. And I ended up happening upon network marketing. I'm like, I was that person. I was like, okay, I'm never gonna be the 1%, but like we are broke. Like we couldn't even 4.5 years ago, like I couldn't pay my electric bill. So I got like this final termination notice, which was not the first by any means, but it was less than $100. It was $79.13. And I was like, gosh, I'm like 28 years old, 29 years old, and I knew this bill was coming. It's not even $100. It's not a surprise bill. And I can't keep my lights on. Like, this cannot be my life. Mm-hmm. So I joined network marketing and I was like, I can totally do this. Like, I can totally make $80. Like, I've banked on myself before. I can totally make it $80. So I ended up joining and I ended up making the $80. My lights are on. So, so I ended up joining and really like getting into network marketing because it allowed me to go to school. It allowed me to extend my day, and it allowed me to be there to put Ariana on the bus, take her off the bus, be home to help her with homework and all of that kind of stuff. And I didn't have to like listen to anybody else's rules, which was great. I wasn't at risk of losing my job because I was asking why too much.
Yeah.
And I started realizing like, wow, like this opportunity right now, and 4.5 years ago, and it still is that now, but there's just like this stigma around like what you should look like and what you should sound like and who you should be in order to be successful. And I was none of that. like not at all, right? And there were people who were coming into our team who were not that, and they were succeeding. And I was like, wow, like this is so backwards. Like this has like there's a stigma around this industry that you have to look a certain way, you have to be a certain way or whatever, but really like this is the industry for misfits. Like if you don't fit in anywhere else, if you like literally you me right, like you don't fit in, you don't like, you're not the standard, you're not the ideal, you're not all these things, like this could be for you, right? So that was the thing that I was like, gosh, like this is the community and this is the opportunity that I've been looking for my whole life, and essentially studying people my whole life to fit the opposite of how I view this, right? Like I wanted to be that perfect, like, ideal, like what even is that? I don't know, but that's why I ended up staying and being here 4.5 years later. It's like I never thought that this would be the thing, right? But I'm cool with it, it's fine, like, so yeah.
nice. Community is a big thing for you.
Oh, huge.
Let's talk about that. Like what attracts you to certain individuals, certain groups of people? What is about that group, that individual that you're like, like I want to connect with this person. I want to be in this person's orbit or this group's orbit?
Yeah, so that's been one of the things that has been super challenging for me.
Okay.
Being a chameleon my whole life, because for my entire life, it's like I never really thought of which group of people or which people, like who I would be attracted to, because it was always like how I could hide myself the best, right?
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
So as far as community, it's like now, even just like kind of like trying to navigate through that, it's like, I don't know how to say this. I want to say this in the best way possible. With every single person, I try to like understand them on a deeper level even before I know them. Because like I have this awareness that every single person is who they are because of their experiences, because of what they've lived through, because of just a lot of different factors. You know, they weren't just like raised in a room to be whoever they are. Like so many different things go into it. So like right now, a big part of the way that I'm attracted to people, or the groups of people that I'm attracted to, is like the more open your mind is, and not necessarily in the sense of like a conscious openness. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The more open people's minds are, or the more that they just have this equal part of like, let me understand myself and understand the world around me and be flexible in both. That's really mostly the people that, or the groups that I gravitate to, because I know who I am now, and I love like learning more about myself now, and I love growing as a person now, but I also understand that that requires other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so like those are the people that I gravitate to, because I feel like I'm forever growing. My brain is forever growing, and I don't necessarily have a desire. I don't think I'll ever have a desire to connect or to build connections with people who have reached their maximum growth.
Plateau,
You know,
right?
right,
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So that's really like the group that I'm, or the ideal group. I don't know, the ideal person.
Yeah,
That's what I'm very attracted to. Yeah.
Gotcha. So not being stuck, being fluid, being water. Like water can be liquid, it can be a solid, it can be a gas. Like learning how to not necessarily manipulate yourself, but learning how to move through the world with the understanding that the world is ever changing, the world is ever growing, and you have to be willing to understand that you are too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I have to be able to grow and adapt to contribute to the world, and vice versa, right? Like I can't grow. There's only so much work that I can personally do without my understanding that who I am as a person affects the world, right? It's like, it's funny that you say it like with water, because I'm like forever talking about like ripple effects, right? Like if I am unwilling to grow, if I'm unwilling to learn, like where does that put me in the universe, as far as like every single thing that I do creates a ripple for people I will never meet, right? So those are definitely the people that I gravitate to, who have that understanding. Or maybe, again, it doesn't even have to necessarily be conscious, because I feel like I've had that understanding before I even understood that was a thing, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you have any advice you would give to someone who was interested in MLM?
Yeah. Be very conscious of what your gut tells you. For me, a huge part of like, even before joining MLM, I was very much so, it wasn't even an attraction. It was like a social attraction.
Okay.
It's like, this is what MLM is. So like the really nice cars and the really nice homes and the perfect outfits and the perfect content and the perfect pictures. And I gravitated towards that because it's pretty and perfect in my life. I don't think has ever been pretty and perfect and, wrapped in a bow, right? But like the way we're raised is like, that's attractive, right? It's like all the good, all the whatever, and you kind of get lost in that.
Yeah,
and I think
American
a lot
dream.
of people, it's like a lot of people just like, they see that and they don't have that yet, or they see that and they want that, and that's what they gravitate to. And I think that that's the hardest thing around MLM, is like a lot of like even like the anti-MLM, like the bashing around it, I understand, because you paint this picture and you say like, you know, this is what you will have, like, that's not that. So I mean, anybody like really like kind of either there or like considering MLM, just really follow your gut with it. You know what I'm saying? Like if it feels like it's this picture perfect thing with the people that you're following or the opportunity that you're looking for, it probably is. You know, so don't be scared to like really like connect with the people who you feel are sharing it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, the like people who aren't afraid to. I don't think, I mean, when I joined, my leader wasn't like, you know, my top leader was a top leader. My direct leader, she was not a top leader, but I resonated with her, and it was the small things. It was like, gosh, you know, she's able to, you know, take the day and go on a field trip with her kid. That matters to me, right? Like, it matters to me that, you know, she was collecting bottles at some point in time to put food on the table for her family, and now she's not, right? So like the small things, right? The things that like you can see yourself in right now, instead of having to like feel like, oh, I have to become this completely different person. I have to become this completely different thing. I have to sound a certain way. I have to be a certain way. Like, find the things that make your soul feel good. And that you just get that good, like, I don't even know, that's not advice. Find the thing that you get the good vibe from. Like, that's not advice,
no,
right?
Absolutely.
Like, that's so
listen,
subjective.
Someone out there is going to listen to this, and they're going to completely understand everything you just said. Is going to resonate with them. Sure. Like, so don't say there's not advice. It's definitely advice. Definitely
it's advice. Such subjective. Like, just whoever you vibe with, whatever opportunity you vibe with, but definitely go with your gut, because I see so many things out there that I'm like, gosh, like, I know this industry can significantly help and change a lot of people's lives, but not when they're not sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, the truth behind it. And it's not all pretty. Like, no business period is all pretty. Like, and if it was, I'd be like, what's happening there, right? So yeah, so just be open-minded and really follow your gut. It would be my biggest thing.
Yeah, I love the authenticity. Like, I know, like, on our text messages, like I said, I think I said that word a lot, because I fully believe that you will make the greatest connection with someone else when you can show up as yourself, you know, and
so cool. Being
comfortable with doing that takes time, takes practice. You're going to want to give up, because it's going to suck. It's going to suck, like learning who you are, learning what you want in life. It's going to suck. Like, I'm speaking from experience, and I'm sure you can as well. Like, there were days when I was like, fuck this shit, period. Period. Like,
right.
You know, whatever. But learning how to navigate those waters is a skill that I think we all need to learn. And it's not just one skill, several skills, but yeah, being authentic and learning where your people are and seeing the good, but also seeing the hard and the bad, and like the days when you literally just want to stay in bed and that's it. Like, that's your best. Yeah, like, that is your absolute best, and being okay with, you know, that being your best.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people don't realize, like, it's the, I'm not going to get like religious about this, but it's the God and devil conversation. Like, you can't believe in one without the other, right? Like, you can't believe in good without bad. You can't have success without failure. Like, it's like this balance of both, and it's a crappy balance because when the bad comes bad, right? But like, understanding that, like, that is what gives you that gauge to when things are good, right? Yeah.
And you can appreciate it.
Oh, for sure.
You can definitely appreciate it.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Can you think of a recent challenge that really, really tested you?
This was a setup question.
And how did you navigate through that challenge? You don't got to get into details.
I didn't get into detail.
But like a challenge that really and you had to figure out how to right yourself.
Yeah. So my life now. So the past year and a half. So I'm going to answer this question like all the way through.
Do that shit.
So 2 years ago, we moved into our dream home. We don't own it, we rent it, but it's perfect. My mom has her office. I have an office. It's 3 bedrooms. It's in the middle of the woods. It's perfect. And I'm like, gosh, like I worked my butt off for this. Like this now is the moment I get to enjoy it. So we moved in. We moved in 2.5 years ago, and right after we moved in, it ended up being a leap year. So it was February 29th, March 7th or something, COVID, like everything shut down.
Gotcha.
I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Look at the universe working for me. So now we get to be in our dream home and we don't have to leave, right? It's awesome. So a couple months in, our heat went, our plumbing went. So everything shut down and we don't have heat or plumbing. So like my landlord's great. So he's like, yeah, we're going to fix it. But like, it's the middle of winter now. And I'm like, we have to stay somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's COVID. Right? So we ended up having to figure that out a little while later with COVID, with Ariana going remote. A little backstory, she had been diagnosed with ADHD when she was 7 years old. And for 6 years, I'm not against medicine. She's on medicine now. I take medicine. But we really wanted to try everything first, which was actually a really great decision because we still use those things. But we had been treating her holistically. We ended up having to get a tutor come to the house, which was chaos in the middle of, COVID. So it was like, we had a hard time finding a tutor. We ended up finding a family friend. And she had a really bad bout of depression. So I had to kind of like take a step back from my business and pour into her. And I think that happened to a lot of teenagers. And then just after that, it was literally life hitting one thing after another. Like our car went, we had to get our car fixed, a couple family emergencies, like all this different stuff. And then out of nowhere, she started getting really sick. Ariana. And I've shared this a lot on social media. I didn't really share like what was actually happening because we didn't know. So out of nowhere, she ended up getting put on medicine for ADHD in January of last year. And a couple months later, she started getting like, she's 14 now, so she was 13 at the time. I didn't monitor her weight, but like all of a sudden I started seeing like her collarbone showing more. And I was like, what is going on? Like, so I made her get on the scale and I noticed that she had dropped a little bit of weight. And I'm like, you're eating the same. She had always had kind of like stomach issues. But a couple weeks after that, she started getting really bad episodes of massive stomach pain. She would start eating and then be like hunched over screaming on the ground. So we took her back to the doctor, and when we took her back, we realized she lost 14 pounds. And she's a tall, thin human. 10 to 15 pounds was a lot for her, especially being like a developing like young teenager. And I'm like, something's not right. Over the next couple months, she lost a total of 50 pounds. We had been taking her to a GI. She couldn't eat properly, which was never a thing. She's like, food is her jam. And she's like bougie food. Like, let me find, like, what do you want to eat tonight? I'm going to find like a very unique restaurant. And we're going to like, she loved food. And she started developing this fear around food because anytime she would eat, went to this thing.
Yeah.
So we started going to doctors. I promise I'll get to like what it's taught.
You're fine. No, continue. So, I'm here. We're here.
We went to we got a referral to a GI like in our pediatrician's network, or however you would say that. And she was like, we did all the tests, nothing's wrong. Just, we don't want her to, keep losing weight. So maybe, her colon's not working properly. It's just running slow. And I'm like, her colon running slow is not the reason, but whatever. So she put her on a high dose of like laxatives and stuff like that, which ended up making the problem worse. We found out later.
Wow.
So she was on like this high dose of laxative, and the doctor was like, just feed her anything she will eat. I don't care. Just feed her. We don't want her to lose any more weight. We weren't even trying to have her gain weight, but at that point in time, she had lost over a fourth of her body weight.
Okay.
So I was like, you know what, forget this. I'm taking her to Columbia University in the city. And in order to do that, we ran all of these tests. We ended up finding a tumor in her liver. So that was scary. It ended up being a benign tumor. It's just something that happens. And apparently most women have it and they walk around with it and it never bothers them. They don't know about it. But we had to have the cancer conversation with her. And so she had a liver doctor, a liver specialist, and then a whole team at Columbia for her GI issues. Mm-hmm. So we ended up going, and we stayed for like a week and had all these tests done, plus like cancer conversations, which is like, thank God that wasn't the thing, but that's also a level of processing and like, handling to even have that conversation, with your 13-year-old, like, hey, this tumor could literally be nothing, or it can be an aggressive form of cancer. Mm-hmm. So like, that was rough. Yeah. We ended up finding out the GI stuff, and it took 2 medicines to fix. It's not fixed, but it's managed, right? So gotcha. She had a stomach issue, which was causing a colon issue because her colon was trying to protect her stomach, and her stomach was tightening too quick. So she wasn't able to get food in to her stomach. So 2 medicines, cool. She has not gained the weight back, but no more weight loss. And she can eat now. She eats. She
eats now. Good.
Yeah. So with all of that happening, it kind of put into perspective that we moved into this house after like, working really, 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 really hard to just change everything. We moved into this house, and then all this stuff started happening, and life started throwing punches. And it made me realize that like COVID was going to happen anyway. Yeah, maybe the plumbing stuff and the heat stuff wouldn't have happened because we wouldn't have lived in this house, but the stomach stuff was going to happen anyway. The car stuff was going to happen anyway. The family stuff was going to happen anyway. And because I had been given this opportunity 2 years prior, that was really, or 2 or 3 years prior, it was really, really scary. And I just did it out of necessity. And then I just went with it. And I just trusted my gut that I was able to, and it's not like an income claim, I feel like I have to say that, but like I was able to afford to say, no, forget this GI that is in network. I'm taking her to the best children's hospital around here. Like, no, we're not doing this. Like, I'm going where I want to go for her. And the fact that I was able to take that time off and be able to go do that and be able to be with her during a really hard part in her life, right? And it just like kind of like put everything into perspective that like, no, maybe the dream isn't happening right now, but this part has to happen for me to understand the result of the 2 years, 3 years prior of pouring my heart into something that scared the shit out of me, quite frankly, right?
Yeah.
So life stopped hitting, and then I went through a breakup. So my fiance and I were together for 11 years, and it wasn't a conventional breakup, which made it really, really hard. I had Ariana when I was 18. He and I started dating when we were really, really young. In the middle of our relationship, I don't know, he realized that he was transgender and went through a transition. And with all this stuff in life happening and hitting, and we just kind of like came to this conclusion that like, we either have to like pour into this relationship, because life is going to happen no matter how much money we have or no matter how good things are. Like we either just pour into this or something needs to happen. And he kind of realized that something that was important to him was being able to go and live his life oh, this is free of this family. Like, I know that sounds really crazy, but like figure out who he was, if this family is even going to be, not that if this family is even going to be a thing, because he's always going to be in this family, but if this relationship or if this thing that we're working towards our future, like how are we supposed to know, right? So it was like a very weird breakup, and it's been a long time, a long time going, right? Because it's like, it wasn't anything like terrible.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me again, and like with going through, and that was super emotional. And I think that that would have been emotional anyway, but like, especially after, you know, a year and a half of all this stuff happening, that was just another reminder of like, you have the opportunity now to have these choices. And this is always what you've wanted, Angela. You've always wanted choices. Now the universe is throwing choices at you. It's just not your ideal choices, right? So you can't pick and choose your damn choices, Angela.
You got what you asked for.
Right. Like,
you got what you asked for.
Exactly.
You weren't specific enough.
So like, these are the choices. Like now the universe is throwing choices at you, and you just happen to not like them. You can't pick and choose. You wanted choices. You said you wanted choices. You said you didn't want to be backed into a corner. You said you didn't want to be struggling. You said you didn't want all of this. And I'm like, oh no. Next time around, I'm gonna be a little bit more clear. The universe has jokes. So yeah, really the past year and a half of just like navigating life, hard stuff in life too. It's like, you know, that immediate hit or that immediate information. It's like, oh my gosh, this sucks. And I feel like that's like the natural, like where to go, like the emotional, like, oh my gosh, why me? Why is this happening to me? Right. And I don't fault humans for doing that, because like I did that, right? But it's just taking the step back and realizing like, this is what's happening. Mm-hmm. I understand that like all this stuff had to happen for me to, it's the good and bad conversation again, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, the past year and a half has been a really big lesson about life. And, you know, a lot of the time, like really bad, messy stuff has to happen. And I feel like if bad, messy stuff is going to happen anyway, I'm going to figure out why it's happening and learn something from it, than just sit in it. And, you know, don't get me wrong. There have been days I'm like, I'm not getting out of bed. I am so sad for myself. That has happened.
Yeah, of course. But
ultimately, it's like being able to take a step back and really take the time to process information. I feel like a lot of people don't prioritize that, to process what's going on and what's happening, and figuring out that like, this is so necessary, mm-hmm. even more so necessary than probably the success we've had in this business, to like kind of like really see that life has to hit and life has to happen in order for that growth to happen, right? So the past year and a half has been probably the biggest learning lesson that I've ever had, because it's been like that, I can't just problem solve out of all of this. I can't just think about all of this, right? And use my big brain to find a solution. It's like all this stuff that's like, gosh, there's really no solution except for feeling my feelings. What is this, right? So yeah.
Yeah, feeling your feelings. That's something that I had to learn how to do. And I have to come to the realization that there's a lot of people in this world that still don't know how to do that. And it's not my responsibility to teach them. It's not my responsibility to show them. And I'm like, shit, I would just want to show you, because life will be so much easier if you can just sit in what you're feeling for a moment. Like, are you mad? Be mad. Are you angry? Do you want to rage? Fucking rage.
Right.
Do you want to cry? go cry, because crying is so therapeutic. I wish people would understand that. Like, it's so therapeutic it's like a release. Like, cry. If you want to scream, go out back and scream. Like, you know, if you want to be happy and do a cartwheel, do a cartwheel. I'm scared to do cartwheels because
me too.
I'm like, I'm tall and I've never done a cartwheel, never tried. So I feel like if I try now, I'm probably going to break my neck or something.
No,
what happened to Erin?
You have a lot of area. Like, you have a long arm to catch you or a long leg.
It doesn't matter. It's still getting there. It's getting there. And I still have a lot of life to live. And the last thing I want to do is die because I tried to do a cartwheel.
Right? Could you imagine? Like, that's what took me out, a cartwheel. Come on.
All the stuff that I've been through, all the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations, me setting myself up for failure. And this is the one thing. This is the one thing that took me. This is what took me out, trying to do a damn cartwheel, trying to celebrate, right? Yeah, no. No, thank you. I'll just clap, give myself a high five, like whatever it is. But cartwheels is not going to be it. All right. Is there anything else that you want to share? Anything you want the listeners to know about you, where they can find you on social media, anything like that?
Yeah, sure. But something I'd like to share with your listeners is that your content is like life-saving. So it's so funny because just real quick, like when you were just saying about like feeling your feelings, I think so many people, I heard a quote one time, and like, you talk about this, but you don't talk about it. Maybe you have said this. I watched a lot of your stuff, so maybe you have said this, but it's like, you can't heal with just your brain because your ego literally won't allow you to. And for so long I was like, whatever. I have figured out ways to feed my family. I have figured out my whole life with my brain. You can't tell me anything, right? Like, my brain can solve anything, right? And you talk about this, and I think that it's so cool to like really, and I know that you said that like you wish you could just like shake everybody and like make them understand like the power that like having that understanding of yourself, and that understanding that like the things that people do are just, it's so normal. It's like, but just because it's normal is not right, kind of thing. Yeah. So I love your content. I think that it's so cool, and I think that with what you're doing is so necessary, because we're not taught that, like, at all. We're not taught that like feelings are normal. You don't have to, you take a breath, you feel enraged, like find a healthy way to get it out. You don't have to just take a breath and calm yourself down. That's not why feelings are there, right? Yeah, like
we're meant to feel them. That's why they're called feelings.
Right. If they were meant to just like calm down and suppress and not feel, you wouldn't feel feelings, right? So I think that that's really cool. And so yeah, I mean, people can find me at on Instagram at the.Angela Musco, same on TikTok. My content is like, right now I'm flowing with it. It's all over the place. If you're looking for a niche, I am not your girl. I'm like, how do I feel right now? I'm gonna share it, right? People are like, what do you actually talk about? I'm like, I talk about humans, I talk about hearts, I talk about, I don't know, I talk about whatever I want. But that's where they can find me. But like, really, we're on your podcast talking about how to find you, because I'm so obsessed. It's so cool to like see people and to connect with people who like get it, and just like encourage people to actually, I think essentially that's literally what you do. You encourage people to be human. Like, forget what you have taught to be a robot, like go back to being human. So I didn't answer your question at all. I just wanted to tell you that.
Just blowing my head up, like, no, thank you. Like, it means a lot, because the person I am today, a lot of people know I was never this person. I was always a very, very dark individual. Life happened to me, not for me. And everybody else was to blame, and that's something that, being able to say that now, back then it's like, no, I ain't do shit. Like, what? I'm the best. Like, and I actually, I'm not even gonna lie to you, I actually reveled in the fact that people like when people refer to me, they refer to me as an asshole. Like legit. And I was like, you can ask my wife. So we met, and I ghosted her for like a whole day. Like, we met on Instagram, whatever. We talked back and forth for a little while, and then I ghosted her for like a whole day. And like, she hit me up like, what are you doing? What's going on? I'm like, listen, I'm just trying to see if I'm really the asshole that everybody makes me out to be. And da 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 and blah. And like, it took me really, really doing a lot of deep heart work. Like, yeah, that shit was hard, but it takes heart work. You have to be willing to go deep with yourself. Like, you can lie to everybody else, but when it comes to yourself, you need to be as honest as possible. That's the only way you're going to grow. And that's what I hope people get from my content. Like, my mission has always been, from the very beginning, to leave this world better than I found it, starting with myself. I can't fix everything else if I'm not willing to look in the mirror and check myself when I need to be checked. And I can't get mad at somebody else for checking me, because I didn't check myself. I knew I needed to be checked. So that's
the biggest thing. That's the hardest thing. And I can so relate to that asshole thing, because that's how me and moment. Except I was his boss. But anyway, I digress. But seriously, it's like I think that's, I wish that people knew, like, people who are in that space that you and I were in, and like can really like resonate with and relate to. It's like almost those people feel like, like I just am. But like, for them to realize, like, that's the exact space that you need to be in right now in order to make that choice to just start.
Yep.
When people feel like so stuck and they don't see a way out, it's like, I want to shake you, because like, no, you are the perfect candidate. Like, yes. you do this, right? So yeah,
you can absolutely do it. You have to get out of your own way and get out of your own head. And I know you said something about the ego getting in the way, and that's literally it. Like, your ego, like, is not allowing you to grow. It wants you to stay small. Mm-hmm. Because of maybe some childhood adversity, some childhood trauma. And that's what I mean. Like, you got to get real with yourself if you ever expect to move through the world the way you were meant to, Yeah. So, okay. All right. So I'm not going to keep you all day, but I have one more question for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like the question before was the setup question, but I feel like now it is.
No. This is a question I'm going to ask every single one of my guests, and it has everything to do with the title of this podcast. Angela, what does resilience mean to you?
That was good. I didn't cry this whole time. Resilience means, to me, it's just the giving in, and understanding that every single living thing, I mean, this might be like a little abstract, but like every single living thing on this planet has a purpose. And until you can kind of give in and separate, I don't want to say separate, but until you can give in and kind of like separate from the ego, the fear, all of that kind of stuff, and realize you have a purpose. And it might not be, to be a whatever famous person, a crazy wealthy person, doesn't mean that you don't have purpose. And I think that resilience to me really means that giving in and almost like submitting to energy and the universe, and understanding that I don't believe that whole thing of like, I hope this answers your question. I don't believe that whole thing of like, God doesn't put people through more than they can handle. Mm-hmm. I think that when you have resilience, and when you have, and everybody has it, it's just tapping into it, right? When you're willing to just like give in and kind of like submit, and realize that the things that are happening to you are to shut you the hell up. Sometimes we just have to be shut up so that we can listen. And it feels lonely. Being resilient is lonely, right? And I think that I think that things are going to be thrown your way until you shut up enough to understand what's happening and just like go inside and listen and have that openness and that willingness to just say like, listen, this is not going to kill me. This going through this is really hard and it really hurts and it's really not the greatest right now, but if I can just quiet enough and just submit and just really just open myself up to learning whatever I have to learn right now, then the moving forward comes and the resilience comes with that, right? But it's that choice of just, I'm not going to keep taking this stuff. Like life is going to throw stuff at me, right? But like how much is being thrown at me? Like why me right now, right? And it's because people, like it's happened to me before. It's happened to you. Like we just didn't shut up enough, right? So it's like just stop, just listen to what's inside. You don't have to listen to all the noise. You don't have to listen to all the static. It's the willingness to do that. And once you do that and you start doing the inner work and the heart stuff that you were talking about, then the resilience, you are resilient, right? It just then begins to show. So I hope that answered
that. You just literally resilience in action. That's what you just explained. Like resilience in action, like the surrender to yourself.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. Angela, thank you so very much for hanging out with us for a little while today. And we appreciate you so much. You do know that, right?
Yeah. I appreciate you and thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, we're gonna hit this. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Resilience in Action, the podcast with your host, Erin Brown. And I want you to remember, resilience in action will always lead us to a greater human experience. Until next time.